Okay, so I'm a mess, but hello and welcome back to another episode of Finding Her Voice. First, some housekeeping, but apologies for the inconsistency there's been these past few months. I think we can all really just chalk it up to chaos in our lives in terms of scheduling. So apologies, but we're back, and we have a few fun months ahead of us, or a fun few months ahead of us, but with the way the world is now, who knows? Including more horror and holiday films in the future. I'm thinking we might do a trade-off of one month being a theme, the next a feature on one filmmaker, but we'll see. I'm once again joined by film writer AJ Chase and editor-in-chief Gabrielle Bondi for this month's episode, where we'll be talking about the work of Jane Campion. A fearless filmmaker, Campion was the second of four female directors to be nominated for Best Director at the Oscars, the first female director to win the Palme d'Or at Cannes in 1993, and she won Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars for The Piano. So she tends to strike really different tones in all of her films. She never does the same thing twice. And with Top of the Lake Season 2, debuting in September, it just felt like the right time to kind of talk about her work. We had talked about The Piano in the past, but again, her work's kind of everywhere, and it's been spanning the last few decades, and she's just a wonderful, wonderful, intense director. And again, I don't have enough adjectives to really describe her, especially some of my favorite works by her. But before we really dive into that, to kind of bring us back in the loop, I wanted to talk about or get a catch up on what our favorite films directed by women were so far this year. So, AJ or Gabby, if you want to save me from me talking and go ahead and that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I think there maybe hasn't been many recently new ones, but I think like Wonder Woman obviously sticks out in mine as being one of my favorite movies of the year directed by a woman, as well as The Beguiled from Sofia Coppola. And it's just kind of like in a fun, sort of cute way. I did like Home Again, which was directed by I think Nancy Meyers' daughter. So, which I should know her name, and I feel very bad. She shouldn't be known in the shadow of her mother.
It's hard when your mother's Nancy Meyers.
Yeah, exactly. So I will definitely look that up next time. But yeah, I mean, I think it's been a solid year, and there's lots of movies that I am looking forward to seeing. Like, I think it's called Mudbound.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lady Bird from Greta Gerwig. So I think there's still a lot to be excited for this year. But it's been a really great year so far, especially just with Wonder Woman being like the biggest movie so far this year and being directed by a woman.
And yeah, my favorite was Love Song by So Young Kim. And I'm
so delighted.
Yeah. Like, I was really surprised by the film. And I kind of wrote a whole like response to it, and then realized I just sounded crazy because I was just like, I love this movie. It's great. But I just think it was really, really nuanced and kind of unexpected, and it was something kind of refreshing. But I definitely agree there's been a ton of female directed films that I've enjoyed this year, but I think that just stands out as one of my favorites.
Yeah, you two actually mentioned, I mean, my two favorites by women. Wonder Woman kind of just holds strong at this point. Even if I haven't seen it since, but it sticks in my mind as being such an amazing in-theater experience, that in the same way that like The Avengers was, but different in the sense that it like related to me more and I connected more and I just felt more kind of empowered. But in the sense that when you have those amazing in-theater experiences where you just feel so excited, sometimes that can stick with you almost more than the movie. And I mean, like, I was crying at the movie and laughing at the movie, and it was just really empowering. Whereas Love Song, I like watched in my bed on Netflix, like on a whim. And I was so grossly moved by it that it's in my top 10 right now of my films so far this year. I've seen In Between Days by the director before, so I knew she was really into this kind of intricate and intimate storytelling. And I'm such a sucker for like stories about female friendship to begin with, so that when it's added that kind of extra layer of like intimacy, it just, I don't know, it really captured me. I think I cried at that one too, though. So I think that's just a moment in my life. But for other movies that I've loved this year, directed by women, there's the Cat documentary, Ketty.
Ketty, I loved Ketty.
That I adored. Like, again, that just kind of plays to what I love, Cat. And then I loved Their Finest, and I think it's a wonderful double act to play with Dunkirk, because it shows like the people back home during that. And then also, because I just saw this recently, Battle of the Sexes, which is a two-parter by a man and woman duo, and I adored that. It's by the Little Miss Sunshine and Ruby Sparks team, and I think that story couldn't have been told without a female voice, or at least not told in the way that it was. So if you two haven't seen Battle of the Sexes, I really hope you do for that reason. But also, you know, Emma Stone is the best she's ever been in my mind. So it's really just, it's a wonderful film, and it's a wonderful sports film on top of being like a drama and comedy. So it's really good.
I went to go try to get tickets for it, and it's just not showing in any theaters near me.
Oh no!
And I'm like, I am so bummed. I want to see it so bad.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I hope you guys see it soon, and or we can save it for a month and do it based on that filmmaker. Because again, she did Ruby Sparks and Little Miss Sunshine, and that's a really interesting trio of films to be released like really far apart from each other.
Which is kind of like, I'm sorry, which I was just going to point out, it's kind of like a common thing with female directors having movies come out so far apart.
But it is interesting in the sense that, like, you would think, based on like Hollywood logic, that because she always is working with a guy, like it might bolster her opportunities. But who knows? I know we ran an interview with them on The Young Folks, so we'll just have to link it in this post, because I think they talk about the reasoning behind why it takes them so long. But Gabby, I agree, for the most part, it's usually like they just don't like giving women other chances. So to dive into Campion a bit, I want to start out really generally and say, so far in what you've seen by her, what is your favorite film?
I think The Piano remains my favorite, and I think that's sort of surprising to me, just because Bright Star is definitely a film that would be right up my alley, and I do love Bright Star, and I watched it very recently for the first time. But I think, I don't know, for some reason, The Piano, like, is a little deeper, and I don't know, I think there's, like, I don't even think it's fair to say it has a little bit more layers. It's just, I guess, it's a different kind of story, but I just liked it more. That's all. There's really no like cosmic explanation here. Like, I just liked it more. But I don't want it to seem like I don't like Bright Star either, because I really did love Bright Star. So
are those the only two films you've seen by her, or had you seen Top of the Lake too? I thought you had seen Top of the Lake.
Yeah, I saw the first season of Top of the Lake, which I think is incredible. And I started Top of the Lake China Girl, and I haven't finished it quite yet because it's very unsettling to me, which just goes to show just how effective of a director, because she can really create this like eerie feeling that comes across on screen and freaks me out a bit.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'll talk about it in a bit then when we talk about maybe least favorites. AJ, what about you?
The only other film that I've seen by her, besides The Piano, is The Portrait of a Lady. I watched that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Wasn't like thrilled or disappointed by it. I was kind of just middle of the road. I think I watched it for one of my classes in college. And thought it was, kind of just okay. It's interesting that Nicole Kidman was in that, and she's also in Top of the Lake China Girl. So I thought that was kind of interesting, having the same director and another actress come back in. But yeah, I guess of of the 3 works that I've seen by her, Top of the Lake is my favorite, since that's kind of more up my alley than the 2 films that I had seen of hers.
So you said, so you've seen The Piano on Top of the Lake. You haven't seen Bright Star yet?
Oh, well, yeah, Bright Star. But of the things that I've seen prior to our meeting of the minds here.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll get to Bright Star because I have a lot of feelings, I have a lot of emotions. I want to save my excitement.
Got it. So I was like about to be a little.
No, because I'm gonna. Yeah, I had no idea what it was about, and then I walked into it and I was like, "Oh my god, this is made for me."
I know. Okay. So I'll jump to my favorite because I am just I'm gonna say Bright Star without a shadow of a doubt because it's in my top 5 movies of all time, and like I really meticulously thought this out. Like I have a top 200 out there on a website right now. And like it utterly crushed me. Like out of everything she's done, it is by far like it just hits my aesthetic. It hits my mood that I was in, and I think it just captures that like sweetness, but also like kind of overbearing sense of loss that like permeates her films and just channels it into like one storyline and makes it just so crushing. I really enjoyed it, and I also like it's just visceral. It's like you feel like everything that they're feeling in terms of like just the elements around them, and I just think it's perfect filmmaking. If I'm not including Bright Star, the next one is Portrait of a Lady, actually, which is funny after you said you didn't like it much, but I just watched it for the first time like 2 weeks ago or so for another feature on another site. And I don't know, I really connected with it. I just really loved it. And I think The Piano maybe caught me at the wrong time because I can acknowledge that on a technical standpoint, everything that it was nominated for, everything that it won for, you know, it's such an achievement in filmmaking, but The Portrait of a Lady just kind of struck out and I think really got to the essence of her, like the ambiguity of her character's happiness, which I feel like she does a lot. Like a lot of her female leads don't really lead, like they don't really end in a content space. And I think Portrait of a Lady did that best. But yeah, maybe I just really loved her and her hair. I don't know, maybe I'm really shallow, but I really just loved the movie. So I was gonna ask least favorite, but it seems like we kind of accidentally touched on that. Can you think of a comparable filmmaker to her though? Because I was trying to today and kind of having a hard time.
That's a really good question. I can't. I mean, she does a lot of period pieces, and to compare her period pieces with other directors who kind of do the same kind of genre, like they're more like on the like pomp and circumstance of the times. Like it's, you know, very more flashy costuming. It's not really. It's more bright. It's more colorful. It's the language is more like pretty and, you know, like haughty, I guess you could say. And in her films, and it's not quite like that. It's a little bit, not to say duller, but more realistic. The tones are more softer. I mean, it feels real. It feels like this is actually how it looked back then. So it's really hard to think of a filmmaker who actually, you know, doesn't, you know, like turn up the contrast and like, you know, make some, like, you know, makes kind of like a period piece like that. I would say the most similar would have been like Cary Fukunaga's Jane Eyre. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Yeah.
Would maybe
I see that. That's a good one that I hadn't thought of.
You know, I think he would be a director, kind of. I mean, kind of like how if you match his True Detective first season with Top of the Lake, I can get like kind of like a similar vibe there.
Yeah.
So wow, I just talked myself into an answer. Yes.
Because the one I just thought about was Mike Lee, and I don't know if you've seen any of his films, but he did like Another Year, Topsy Turvy, Naked, and I feel like he kind of casts his characters in a similar way, in that he doesn't take the most obvious faces for his roles. Like, he kind of likes people with interesting features. And also all of his movies are very steeped in realism, but also go from, you know, an angsty, hedonistic, like 90s portrait of drug abuse to like Mr. Turner, which was about the painter, and it's like this lavish, like, I don't know, it's like a moving portrait, and it's also a period piece. So he's kind of the only one I can think about, because I do think she's so singular in how she does her projects. But AJ, did you think of anybody?
No, I was trying to think of a female director that I could compare her to specifically. And it's difficult because I feel like she focuses more on what is unseen and unsaid in the narrative, and rather than kind of explicitly stating things or showing things or kind of amping up femininity or power or kind of themes of sexuality or anything like that. There's something that like simmers below the surface, and I think it's really interesting in her direction that she keeps it at this level of realism that is sometimes painful to watch, but it's not being like caricatured in the way that some directors take it, especially male directors navigating female stories. They'll kind of amp it up a lot, but I can't necessarily think of a female director in particular that she's kind of comparable to. But I guess that's just a sign that she's really talented.
Yeah, or at least, I mean, and she is, like, this isn't to dismiss that she's really talented, but that, and again, that her voice is kind of her own and nobody really sees the world like she does. But maybe, I mean, this might be one that I might have to, like, tweet out or something, you know, because I feel like there's people out there who have such vast knowledges of, like, historical film, and, like, I don't know about you two, but, like, you know, I can't always just draw a name out of the hat, but I really think we're kind of on the right page here, that there isn't anybody really quite like her. Like, for some reason my mind went to Lynn Ramsey, and I think that's only because we watched The Piano and we need to talk about Kevin at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't think of any other reason why that would make any sense at all, except for they both depress me often. But, like, that's it. So yeah, I'm curious now. I'll have to ask some other people too to see if they think of anybody, because I would, if there is somebody else like her, I would love to watch their films. But, or actually no, maybe early Gillian Anderson, not Gillian Anderson, wrong one, Gillian Armstrong, who did Little Women, for early films maybe, but who knows? We'll figure this one out. So I guess we should kind of get to Bright Star.
Oh, yes.
There's something I want to talk about it specifically, but we should talk about the film first. So, AJ, you hadn't seen it, correct? And neither you got Gabby. So,
no, it was my first time seeing it, like 2 weeks ago. So,
that makes me so excited. So, what were your initial thoughts, Gabby? Did you seem to like it less than us two? So why don't you go first?
I wouldn't say that. I mean,
I thought you said you didn't connect with it as much.
Oh no, maybe I did say that, but it's not what I meant. Yeah, no, I didn't like it as much as The Piano, but I did enjoy it. I did know, I really did love it. I was really caught up in it, and again, kind of just like how understated it is and very sensual, and it's not overt in any way. Like, it's just so subtle with its emotions, and it kind of creeps up on you, kind of how it creeped up on the characters in a way. So when she's so devastated at the end, you feel empty inside as well.
I mean, that's going to be its own separate question, so I don't even want to talk about the ending.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
About that in a second.
I won't elaborate, but I mean, I think it just goes to show just how, like, viscerally, like, and emotionally, like, resonating that moment is. But I thought the costuming is amazing, and I think really just sort of like an unappreciated way to go about the costuming of that era. Because again, it's like in a lot of other movies, you don't quite kind of see those colors like put on screen in that way, and again, like with those color tones, because they're always brightened up, or they're more poppy. And she did wear these lavish outfits, but they were also like filmed in a realistic fashion, I guess. I don't know. I was just not used to seeing costuming done that way, and I thought it was really interesting and really added to like the scenery and the kind of entire I don't know what I'm thinking of, or not aura, like just the way of the picture, the cinematography, the way everything kind of was placed together on the screen.
I mean, it was like the costumes built themselves around who the characters were written to be. And that's what I kind of loved, is that she was this kind of larger than life presence and so full of life. So of course her outfits, like beyond the fact that she's a designer or whatever, or a seamstress, like I liked that it just felt like all of her outfits kind of like grew above her. It's just like, it was like she had too much life inside of her to be contained to like simple outfits. And I just thought it was a wonderful way to visualize that without like ever having to actually say it. And I do love movies that can say and not tell, or show and not tell. So yeah, I thought the costuming's great too. It's just like a little element that in any other film, like if not done well, you don't always notice it, but when it's done amazingly, it can really add to it.
And like one thing that kind of popped out to me like towards like the end of the movie was that usually I don't get this feeling, but like I kind of wanted to read the script after I finished it, because I just thought like the story and the emotions and everything was just so like well crafted. And I'm just wondering how she put that all down on paper.
Yeah.
Not a lot of words. There's words, but it's not like it was just like what you were seeing, like you said, like show, don't tell. So I was just really curious to see,
I'm writing down fine scripts now because you've got me curious.
yeah, because like I just want to see, like, I mean, and the movie's kind of sparse, and I was wondering, is the script the same way? Like, is Jane Campion the kind of filmmaker that finds it as she does it, or does she kind of map it all out ahead of time? Because I'm always interested in kind of like how filmmakers go about, making their stories and bringing them to life. So something that kind of popped in my head.
No, definitely. Because it is kind of a quiet movie, but I have to imagine with all the little things that happen in it and all the things that are conveyed in between that moment, like, I'd be surprised if it's like a really lengthy script.
Yeah.
But I'd also wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of filling in the gaps. But, I have to imagine there's a lot of workshopping on set to build the chemistry too.
Mm-hmm.
I lent out my DVD so I can't go and watch it. I moved to Tech and she moved to Chicago. But AJ, what were your initial thoughts past Devastation?
Well,
I know, were you a John Keats fan before? I don't know why I'm guessing you were.
Yes.
Because I know like writing and poetry, but I'm guessing.
He is my absolute favorite poet from the Romantic period. Okay. And so walking into the film, I didn't know what it was about at all. As soon as I figured out what it was about, I was prepared for the ending, because I know John Keats. I studied him in college, studied all of his works, so I'm very like deeply entrenched in the literary side of him.
So
and like
spoilers, he died.
I knew he died, and his understanding of his death, his impending death, really influenced a lot of his works. So you have, works like Ode on a Grecian Urn and When I Have Fears, and he's talking about death and the impersistence of time and, the impermanence of beauty and all these different things. But so going into it and understanding, okay, it's about John Keats. We know what's going to happen at the end. I'm so like deeply pleased that she didn't turn it into a film about a poet who died when he was young and was convinced that he was nothing. Like so many other films, kind of, especially with like J.D. Salinger, kind of just turning into this mysterious figure that doesn't ever want to give up the film rights to Catcher in the Rye. She didn't make it just a film about, you know, the poet that guy that died. It was just so beautifully made that I could not be more pleased with, you know, an adaptation of a poet's life, even
Quick
as
sidebar.
sad as it was.
Quick sidebar. I never need to see the Catcher in the Rye movie.
And neither do I. I'm like, I don't want to see it.
But also, as somebody who was a fan of his work then, because what I loved, and I grew to know his work through the movie. I don't know if I want to admit this. I'm not sure I knew about his history when I started the film. I wasn't very knowledgeable about poetry in general, just because it was never anything that really played to what I was interested in necessarily, or I never seeked it out, but I definitely seeked it out past this film, at least his. And when I rewatched it after gaining some context, I thought it was one of the better examples of kind of showing visual poetry in film. So I don't know if either of you like kind of noticed that or cared, but like I kind of loved how there was kind of this like lyricism to everything. Man, I just like I really fucking adore this movie. Like I think this is one of my life-changing type movies. Yeah. Like Almost Famous, Inside Llewyn Davis, like this is up there.
Yeah, I definitely felt the lyricism. I felt definitely captured the essence of Keats, who I was familiar with. I should know more about poetry, but I've taken enough to know like kind of the general idea of who Keats, you know, was and some of his works. But yeah, I definitely thought that it really captured like just the essence of who he is, and it was just, yeah, it was done so beautifully. Like it was just so well incorporated into the story as well. Like it never felt, you know, the poetry, like sometimes when they recite poetry in movies, it feels like kind of like it doesn't fit in very well. It kind of takes you out of the movie. But in this case, it just felt like it flowed right in. It felt like an essential part of this movie that you needed it. Yeah.
And what you said about visual poetry, I know that a lot of his works, he blends very intense emotion with natural imagery, and I think that's exactly what she did in the film. Just visually, it's really, really beautiful, but it's also, it'll rip your heart out. So,
well, the scenes that I think about that like really kind of capture that to me were the scenes where he's laying on top of the tree, and then the scene where she's like laying in her bed and like the screens open, or like the curtains blow by and the wind comes in. Like you kind of just understand. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand what floating on a tree is like, but in terms of like just the wind coming at you, you understand that, and you just feel it. And like, I don't know, just the way she captured nature and walking outside when it's super gloomy out and gross, but like she makes it beautiful. Like, I don't know. I feel like she really understands how to shoot nature, and like, okay, like she understands how to shoot everything clearly in this movie. But I don't know, there was just something very visceral about the surroundings in this. Whereas like, again, I just kind of understood that like, I'd feel that breeze on me right now if I was there. But to the point you had mentioned how it wasn't like many stories like about authors or like distressed poets, especially male poets. I think that was saved greatly by making it her story. Like framed, like, it's like his experiences are framed through how she saw him. And I mean, there's a big chunk of the movie where we don't even necessarily see him, but we hear what's going on with him through her or through his friends. It makes it all the more tragic even to show it through her than him, because she always has such vibrant life about her, so that when, let's get to the ending, when he passes away and she's saying things like, I can't breathe, it's actually kind of like they're taking your heart out. I don't know. Again, I cry easily at films these days, but like when I first saw that a couple years ago, I was sobbing. I was like, I can't breathe either. Like, terrible. But like, and as a fan of Ben Whishaw, like I think Ben Whishaw is one of my favorite actors working right now. Abby Cornish was the one who I was blown away by. I think she gives one of the best performances of the century so far. I think she was wonderful. I can't believe she wasn't nominated, right?
I don't think so. I think she was nominated for like a costuming, and that's it.
Yeah, I think she got a couple like smaller award nominations,
Of course,
but nothing like major, which is a shame. I mean, I had only known her from Sucker Punch.
Me too.
So to see her in this was completely out of the blue.
God damn it. I think I saw her actually at Sucker Punch after, which was like more alarming.
Yeah.
Like, I know how good it can be. But yeah, so something I wanted to talk about briefly, or however at length, is the kind of chaste nature of this film compared to like The Piano and In the Cut, which I'm a half hour into, and they show oral sex really up close. Like remarkably not rated up close. And then you get Bright Star, which is very, what do you call it, kind of sensual, and you know, it's very touching, and you get that there's huge amounts of chemistry there, and they do it the whole time without, like, with kissing maybe once or twice. And I just think it's so interesting to see how Jane Campion can bring out this chemistry in her leads, either completely stark naked or dressed to the nines. And I think that's just so interesting about her as a filmmaker. But again, maybe it's because I just watched like prolonged sequence of a man getting a blowjob.
And you're like, anything after this is sensual and subdued.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something you guys noticed while watching.
Yeah.
If you're watching The Piano or Top of the Lake.
Exactly. No, I noticed it. I think it's like a testament to her like talent and just her kind of understanding of human sexuality, that, you know, that so much could be packed into a simplest touch or something more, you know, pronounced and a bigger kind of not say movement for some reason, but like act. I should say act. So you know, I think she's really good at kind of painting the emotions behind each act, whether they're lustful or, you know, they're emotional. And in the case of Bright Star, it's very emotional. So that chemistry and all that feeling packed in there, you know, the little touch of the finger is like, oh my God, you know, it's, you know, whereas in Piano, like the lust that like Harvey Keitel feels is, you know, and my God, what's her name?
Holly Hunter.
Holly Hunter. I'm gonna call her.
I just saw her in The Big Sick, and I was blown away that it was the same person. But,
yeah, I just saw that too for the first time. But anyway, you know, the more kind of the lust, the want, the desire, you know, you definitely felt that there, and you see it in their actions. So, yeah, I just think it's just kind of an example of how kind of like how Jane Campion understands both sides, and that, I don't know. I just said what I wanted to say.
To think about how her character in The Piano also like can't speak, and then she kind of shows herself through her sexuality. Whereas like where John Keats is all about words, so he can kind of express himself, and then there's like no physicality in it. so interesting. She's such a great filmmaker. I need to go rewatch Bright Star. Is kind of what I'm talking to myself. Good night. But yeah. Sorry, AJ, if I cut you off. I don't know if you're about to say something.
No, but I love it, and I want to watch it, and I want to tattoo it on the inside of my eyelids so I can watch it forever.
It did. You said tattoo, and in my head, I was like, "Is there a tattoo about this movie that I could get?"
Right? I would jump and get that like yesterday.
Oh my god! Maybe that'll be my second Twitter question. What should I get as a tattoo for Bright Star? It might happen. But is there anything else you guys wanted to add specifically about this movie or about Jane Campion as a filmmaker? I don't know. I know I need to still see Top of the Lake. And I have an Angel at my table on Criterion that has been sitting on my movie shelf for 2 years now that I have not watched because I'm terrible. And those are kind of the two things that I really, really want to see by her. I don't know if there's anything that you two are still kind of like on the fringes of seeing.
I just finished watching Top of the Lake China Girl, and
so you need a break.
Yeah, so it was very, very, very a lot to take in. But if either of you guys have seen Big Little Lies,
yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah,
Me cry too.
I got a lot of that same like vibe from especially the ending of Top of the Lake China Girl. And I know a lot of people weren't pleased with the ending of that, of China Girl, and thought that it was kind of bizarre and disjointed, but I was satisfied with it. That's all I'll say.
It reminds me of Little Lies finale, as in like all the women come together to celebrate their womanhood on a beach.
Yeah.
Right then, damn straight. I'm just gonna skip to that episode. Again, that made me cry like a fool. But yeah, I'll have to watch it. I've been wanting to watch Top Lake, but like I don't watch Elizabeth Moss things. I'm realizing for some reason.
Elizabeth Moss is like my favorite ever. So
yeah, she's amazing from what I have seen of her. I just haven't seen The Handmaid's Tale. You're a huge Mad Men fan.
Yeah.
Well, see, I've seen a couple seasons, so but I know. I heard
for shame. For shame.
But, I know, but I know how it ends.
Whoever spoiled it for you.
I read the review. I read the reviews weekly. I always read reviews of things I don't watch.
I do the same thing, honestly. It's like people are like, "Oh, why are you on top of all these shows?" I'm like, I just read a lot.
I just read.
I need to keep up at work. But yeah, so I definitely need to watch the first season of Top of the Lake, even though I think it's going to scar me. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely suggest watching Top of the Lake. I thought it's like incredible, and I'm still on China Girl. I just have to like be in the right mood for it.
Yeah,
it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, so I'm just like I've been kind of like I don't want to like I don't know. I've been watching like stupid happy things like The House Bunny and stuff. So like I'm just. So like I have to like get myself in that mood to watch it.
I get it. I've been rewatching Will and Grace, so
me too.
I'm in the same like happy mood. So I think that's it though on Jane Campion and Bright Star, at least on my end. Again, if you two had anything else to add, please let me know. Otherwise, I think it's good to kind of talk about what we'll be doing next month.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I rambled enough for the week.
I don't know. I think I want to read whatever you kind of started to write about Bright Star.
I will need to heavily edit it before anybody sees it.
But so next month, so last year we did our female directed horror movies to much success in my mind, since The Invitation ended up being in my top 10 at the end of the year. So this year we're watching American Mary, which I know zero about, which is actually a lot of fun because I feel like I always kind of come at an advantage since I pick a lot of them. But I know absolutely nothing about it, so I'm really excited. And also I actually don't really know much about Near Dark either, except that it's a Catherine Bigelow film, and I've wanted to see it, and it's supposed to be like scary in a I can handle it type of way. Whereas The Invitation kind of like towed the line. In all honesty, I kind of watched it with like my laptop pushed to the end of my bed. So we'll be watching more horror this month. I'm gonna try to fit in a couple of extra directed by women horror films if I can in the month too. So make sure to let us know what you're watching. Make sure to watch along with us so that we can try to start some kind of discussion. I will be more active on our social media outlets for this type of thing. But again, thank you for listening. You can follow me at Allison AJ. Gabby and AJ, where can they follow you on social media?
You can follow me on Twitter at Gabriella Dell.
You can follow me on Twitter at AJ_Caulfield.
And you can also follow us at TYF official on Twitter. You can follow us on our site on Facebook, and also you can support us on Patreon, which we have now, which is cool. And maybe somehow, depending on how it all works out, get involved with one of these podcasts in the future. Of course, of which more details will come if you support. So, happy listening. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next month. Bye.